Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the latest research and reports expressing concern that the UK is not far off a tipping point whereby our manufacturing base could be lost for a very long time if we don't act quickly. Cutting ourselves off from the European supply chains is destroying our manufacturing, something the Tories behind Brexit, for some reason, wanted. But in the emergency lies a good reason to be confident that Labour in government would be seeking to tear down the trade barriers erected by the Tory clowns in power now, as far as they are able to anyway. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, although it is hard to discern what the Conservatives think their long-term appeal to voters is, it is much more clear-cut with Labour. A Labour government ultimately exists to make sure people have access to good quality jobs, which pay well enough for a decent living, and universal access to effective public services. That is their core offer, and it's what they have to deliver on. Unlike with the Tories, Labour do not get a mainstream media making excuses for them. There has been no period of Tory rule during the last 13 years where people have seen their living standards increase. It has been stagnation at best and decline at worst. Take the industrial towns which characterise what's called the Red Wall, for example. The Red Wall voted for Boris Johnson for a number of reasons, but they believed his lies about levelling up. Because the Tories have not delivered, those voters will now fall away and Labour will retake almost all of those seats, if not all of them actually at the moment. But Labour will not win these seats back just because the Tories let them down. They expect Labour to succeed where the Tories failed. They were promised a better life. They've been promised a better life for a long time. And they did everything the snake oil salesman told them to do in order to get it. First of all, they were told we needed austerity. Their lives got worse. They were told we needed to vote to leave the EU. Their lives got worse. Then they were told they needed to vote for Boris Johnson to get Brexit done and launch his levelling up programme. Well, years later, Tories are still arguing with each other, never mind others, with each other about what is Brexit and what is Brexit in name only, and levelling up just didn't happen. Their lives got worse. Now the Tories are telling people to hate things. Hate things and your lives will get better. What? Yeah. It almost doesn't matter what they hate as long as it's not the Tories. Hate teachers, hate nurses, hate environmental protesters, hate doctors, hate rail workers, hate each other, hate boats even. Oh yeah, hate boats. They're screwing your life over. Just hate things and your life will get better. But after all these years of doing what the Tories asked them to do, with increasingly silly instructions, and their lives just getting worse and worse, the penny is finally dropping with enough to force a change of government as soon as the Tories trigger an election. Now, there are people understandably hesitant about Labour's position on trade, Brexit particularly, even though their policies aren't really any different to a party who explicitly wants to rejoin the EU. But it's not just about the policies. Labour have a need, like a literal need, to reverse divergence, to reverse our divergence from the EU. As Peter Foster of the Financial Times points out, the Trade and Cooperation Agreement naturally moves us away from the EU without doing anything. That's just what it does. Each passing year, our standards become more and more distant from the EU's. We are utterly dependent upon European supply chains for our manufacturing, yet this deal we have with the EU over time makes it harder and more expensive to integrate with them. Labour have made no secret of the fact they need to address this, but it is not straightforward. The EU, for example, are not keen on renegotiating the agreement, or so they say, even though some of it must be in 2025 and 2026. Starmer wants to get on with it much sooner. As soon as he wins the election, he wants to crack on, but the EU Commissioner saying, no. We'll wait for the appropriate time if you don't mind. Now, I don't know whether this is just their negotiating position or whether they mean it. We won't find out just yet. It won't be the same commission either. Elections for the next one take place next year. Oh yeah, they're elected, so so much for the unelected bureaucrats. But the point is that if Labour just tinkered, if they just tried to tidy up the edges of this extreme Tory Brexit, as some people fear they might, British manufacturing disappears. Manufacturing is facing an existential threat, and according to many, we only have a few years to avert it. Fail, and that will be that for a very long time indeed, because you cannot just allow manufacturing to fail and then bring it back overnight. You can't expect it to regenerate by, oh, we'll plonk a factory there and that should kickstart it. Because you need all the other businesses which supply it and each other. And this is the imperative for Labour. See, think about the sort of towns and cities which are considered Labour areas. There's a strong reliance on manufacturing. We are a service economy, but the bulk of those services by value based in the south of England. The rest of the country is more dependent upon manufacturing. Imagine a scenario whereby a Labour government presides over a Thatcher-level extinction event in British manufacturing in the north. For all the talk of voters becoming disenchanted with the Tories, that would put the tin hat on Labour as well. It is not in the character or the strategic interests of Labour to allow this to happen. The current Labour leadership are also not blinkered by ideology like the current Tory government with their Brexit purity arguments. The Labour government will look at the situation. They will see Labour areas dependent upon manufacturing, which is dependent upon European supply chains. They will see, as researchers are showing, that with each passing year, natural divergence between Britain and the EU makes it harder and more expensive to access those supply chains. For all Sunak's talk of leading the world in innovative tech this week, that's what it's kicking off today, manufacturing is actually being asphyxiated by unnecessary trade barriers. It will not just be a strategic necessity for Labour to address this, but to do so very quickly. We are literally in the position of killing off manufacturing to any meaningful degree if we allow the Tories another term in office. That's where we are. Because think about it this way, with each factory that closes down and is not replaced, the businesses supplying it get fewer orders. Eventually they get too few orders to remain viable, so they close down as well. Well, that hits existing factories who were getting their products, who can't get alternative supplies easily from around Europe, so they go under. You end up with a domino effect. And within a few years, that's it, done. Recently, David Lammy, who will be Labour's Foreign Secretary, said that he wants to make EU relations his #1 priority. Now, this comment seemed to pass above a lot of people's heads. I think people should consider this. When has this ever happened before? Like, the last Labour government was very pro-EU. I mean, Blair went to France and tried to speak French, for goodness sake. You know, they made a real show of it, undoubtedly so. The difference in approach to the EU between Major's Tories and Blair's Labour was stark, even to me as a young man. And John Major was hardly, you know, sometimes he describes himself as like a pragmatic Eurosceptic. But, you know, these days we would see him as very pro-European, wouldn't we? But the difference was stark. But we all knew that it was the American relationship which was prioritised to our cost. If Labour win the next general election, it will be the first time we have had a government that has said its top foreign relations priority is the EU. That is immense. And it is just another sign to throw onto the pile that Labour are fully seized of the importance of working closely with the EU. Remember, their aim is to work with the EU behind the scenes, no fuss, no alarming the Daily Mail. Just get things done, sort things out. Become a competent government that doesn't have to talk about Brexit all the time. That is their aim. And they will want to move quickly to erase as many trade barriers as possible, albeit within their current red lines regarding the customs union single market. But I've said it before and I'll say it again. Labour cannot afford to allow British manufacturing to fail. Brexit represents an existential threat to manufacturing. I mean, there's no arguing about that. I don't think even the most critical Labour doubter argues with the fact that Labour must absolutely save manufacturing. Even the short-term electoral chances for Labour disappear up their own arsehole if they allow manufacturing to fail. So it's clear they won't let that happen. They will do everything in their power to stop it happening. We know that Labour are planning to hit the ground running developing a green tech industry in the UK, but old tech or new, we still need supplies. And we cannot supply ourselves entirely. And there are things which Labour can do to put our current divergence into reverse. Some of them they can do unilaterally. They can raise our standards back up dynamically with the EU. We can choose to do that. Some of them need engagement, but are still easy, like joining the Pan-European Mediterranean Convention, as I discussed recently. Some are going to be difficult and take time. You know, like negotiating terms in the TCA or bilateral agreements. But the EU negotiates these all the time with other large economies. As long as we find ourselves areas of mutual benefit, it will happen. And remember, The EU is also competing with the US to a degree, but especially China and India. Linking up with the British market, back with the EU's market, is in both of our interests. And given that Labour are not bothering to ask for unicorns, we're not asking to be treated as if we're in the single market without all the responsibilities of it. We're not wasting our time with that. We have a chance to find practical solutions that are in both of our interests. I think we're going to see a lot of movement back in the right direction after the election. Especially to hear David Lammy speak recently. He seems really excited about it. It's like he can't wait to get going. And as I've put my name in the hat to stand as a candidate as well, although the probability is quite small at the moment, there is just a chance I'll be there to put my shoulder behind the efforts as well. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.